So one big question that we're thinking about and that we have thought about on this course is about improving language skills. So what are we doing that is helping our language skills to improve and to develop? Well, if we think about, for example, writing, well, what does it mean to be good at writing? Well, usually we would think that we're talking about speed and efficiency. How quickly can you write the sentence or write the paragraph? So that's part of our speed. So being good at a language, we have to be fairly quick at expressing that. And how effectively or how efficiently can you express that thought? So this is something that I've written in feedback a lot, and we have talked about in class, is less is more, or quality, not quantity. That quite often when things are written in a very long way, the important part of the message is missing or becomes hidden, becomes buried in the words. So often we really need to effectively and efficiently express that thought. So this is why we talk about flow in the writing. We've talked about sentence length. So long sentences are fine, short sentences are fine, but if all the sentences in a paragraph are very long, then that's not very efficient or effective. And if they are all very short, then that's also not very efficient or very effective. So we know what we're talking about with writing. So we can directly compare this to speaking fluency, that speed and efficiency, it's what makes us fluent in a language. So how quickly can you say your idea, and how effectively, how efficiently can you express the thought? So saying something very simple but in a very long way with lots of language around it hides the message that you're trying to say. So how effectively can you say it? So one thing that we have looked at is thinking about language in chunks. So when you are learning a language, even your first language, after the beginner stage, we think about language in pieces, not in single words. So go to school, you think of that as one piece, not several pieces. Mom and dad, you don't think about it as three words like mom and dad. Like I am from, my favorite something is something. So we're thinking about language in chunks because it's the most, number one, it's a very efficient way to remember and to use language, but also that it's how we think, even in our first language. It's how we put language together. So in many ways, our first language is more predictable than our second language because of these chunks. And part of this, part of being able to manipulate in language and manipulate those chunks is using collocations. So words that we often see together. So when we are doing the reading sections, looking at that new vocab, we're also thinking about the language that we see around it. So this is helping us to see the connections between the language. So we can think of it like Lego, right? That we know that this is how we put together our Lego man. We can't really do it in a different order. So the order is our grammar, but the pieces and the colors of the pieces and the order that we're putting it together, that all becomes our Lego man. So we can think of it like our sentence, right? We can think of the head is one chunk. So hat, head, scarf. That's kind of one chunk, and that can connect to another chunk. So it's very predictable, and it's a much more efficient, effective way to speak a language. So this is why doing that group work and that pair work, when we're speaking together and writing together, that's why it's so important, because you are building those connections in your brain, the connections between your language. You are building those connections every time we do the group work and the pair work. You're strengthening the old connections. Okay, so it means you can access that language faster and faster each time that you use it, or each time that you think about it. And this is building up fluency, because you are expressing authentic ideas, you are strengthening the old connections and building new connections in your brain between the language. So it's a very useful and in fact essential way of building language. So we have done a lot of group and pair work, like every class, and this is why we're building those connections. And building those connections, reading and writing are connected. People who read a lot tend to be good at writing. People who write a lot tend to be good at reading. People who listen a lot tend to be good at speaking, and people who speak a lot tend to be good at listening. Basically, everything helps everything. So even listening and writing and reading and speaking, they're all connected and they all help each other. These are not separate things, right? So at school or in your hagwon, whatever, you learn them as separate skills, but they are all connected. And basically, it just comes down to using language. The more you use it, whether it's listening, speaking, reading, writing, the more everything improves.